Hey guys, the Kamsh here, doing a Control Warrior deck tech today from TGT, which came out a few days ago. Pretty sweet set, a lot of cool decks. We've been playing a lot of Miracle Shotgun, maybe we'll do that at some point. But for now, let's talk about Control Warrior. This is my own personal build. It's a little bit more top-heavy than you'd expect, but that's just because a lot of people are playing slower cards, trying to play with some of the new legendaries from the new set, sweet stuff like that. If a few weeks after this video comes out, you see a lot more aggressive decks being played in the meta, feel free to switch out some of the late game for more early game stuff. Start off with, we have 2 Execute, 2 Shield Slam, just because their 1-mana removal spells are really powerful. They're what let the control deck function, since you can remove something and play your big bombs in the same turn. Very powerful. We have 2 Fiery War Axe and 2 Deathbite. Our weapons act as card advantage. They allow us to control the board. Deathbite also gives triggers on things like Acolyte and Grom, and they're just very good to help control the board, since we want to live long enough to get to our late game bombs, and sometimes Brawl isn't enough to do that. We have 2 Armorsmith, again, to try to survive the early game against more aggressive decks. They give us armor, which also works with Shield Slam, pretty good synergy there. We have 2 Cruel Taskmaster, very efficient card, can ping off enemy minions, can trigger our Acolytes and Grom, can, get 2 extra damage in for lethal if we need that, and also leaves behind a 2/2 body, which is always nice. Cards that do something and leave behind a body, like Big Game Hunter. We have a shield block. We're only playing 1, 2 can be clunky, but it lets you draw a card so it cycles through your deck. Doesn't really cost a card slot. It's like playing a 29 card deck where you sometimes pay 3 mana for one of the other cards. It also gives us 5 armor, which we can use for Shield Slam. We have 2 Acolytes, our main card draw engine, which we can trigger with things like Revenge. Oh, we forgot to mention Revenge, didn't we? Revenge is... So, Whirlwind effects are powerful, and you want usually 1 at least, especially in this meta, since a lot of people are playing mid-range Paladin, making lots of tokens in lots of different ways, using their hero power multiple times a turn, or playing with Justicar, which we'll talk about later. So we want a Whirlwind effect, and I found that this is better because, while it does cost 1 more mana, you can still trigger Grom in the same turn with it, and late in the game, if you're down on your luck, this turns into a really powerful board wipe, and since we don't have like a Baron Geddon effect, this is really powerful, especially against Quartermaster and Patron. So we're playing Revenge over Whirlwind, which most people do nowadays. Anyway, we have the 2 Acolytes as our main card draw engine, which we can trigger in various ways to try to draw lots of cards. We have a Big Game Hunter. It's just great because it's a powerful effect that we want, acts as a removal spell, and leaves a creature behind, which we really want to do. We have the 2 Deathbite, which we've talked about. We have 1 Brawl. Again, some people are playing 2, but I find it clunky. But this lets us gain back board parity if we've lost it, and lets us stabilize, so we can play some of our other big spells after it. It does, we can sort of control it with things like brawling with the Sylvanas out, or saving a removal spell or weapon charge for whichever remaining minion survives. We do have 2 Sludge Belchers, which, sort of the perfect minion, because we want a play before turn 6, since our curve is very, pretty dense after turn 6. So we want something that's great against aggro, but also not dead against mid-range or control, and Belcher pretty perfectly fits that role. We have a Thaurissan to try to reduce everything, since this deck is pretty high mana cost, and because the effect is just immediate, so our opponent can't interfere with it. Just a great card. Also a 5/5 body. We have Justicar Trueheart. Now, this is one of the new cards, and this card is very sweet, just because it's going to replace our hero power with Tank Up, which gives us 4 armor instead of 2. And if you can have enough time to play this against like a Hunter or an aggressive deck, you just win, right? Because your hero power is now gaining you 4 life a turn, and they just can't kill you. Like Hunter hero power doesn't even begin to chip away at the armor, even if they have their own Justicar Trueheart, which most of the time they won't, because they'll be playing like Leper Gnomes and stuff. But this card is very sweet, and even in like the Control Warrior mirrors or the more controlling deck mirrors, you get to gain more armor and you're ahead in the fatigue race, even if you have like the same fatigue count. It's also a 6/3 body, which isn't insignificant. Like you can get Dark Bombed or something, but if it does, then they're wasting like a Dark Bomb on it. So it's a pretty sweet body, and just the fact that it permanently upgrades your hero power even after it dies is super sweet. Lasting effect, and a creature on the board. We have 2 Shield Maidens, which is kind of the core of the deck, works well with Shield Slam, gains us some health and provides or armor rather, but basically the same thing against aggressive decks, and provides a big body. So very nice card there, really sweet. We have Sylvanas just to try to steal things, and because it works well with Varian Wrynn, which we'll talk about in a second. We have Dr. Boom because it's still a sweet card, lots of card advantage, and helps, gain board control if you're behind. Is great at parity also, and just wins the game if you're ahead. We have Grom and Alex as our burst combo. You Alex them down to 15, then you activate Grom and hit them for a lot of damage. You can also Alex yourself if you're low and use Grom as just a good, efficient minion, because it is that, and it's a removal spell since it does have charge. Ysera Sweet also works well with Varian Wrynn, and it's just a late game control card. It's also really powerful against things like Druid, where we normally wouldn't even have the late game against them, but Ysera is very hard for certain decks to kill. and also very powerful. And finally, we have Varian Wrynn, another new card. This card is super busted. So not only does it draw you 3 cards, like I'd pay 10 mana for a 7/7 that draws me 3 cards in a control deck, like that's great. That's Neptulon, except it costs a little bit more, but no overload, and they aren't Murlocs, they're actual cards that you put in your deck because you want them. In addition, this puts any minions you draw directly into play. So like the Dream obviously is putting like Ysera, Thaurissan, and Sylvanas into play, because Thaurissan will trigger immediately too once you pass the turn. Ysera will also trigger, and then Sylvanas is just great to have in play. Or if you're like playing Rag, that's great with that too. We're not playing Rag because our curve's a little bit too clunky, and I think all our legendaries are somewhat better than that. But anyway, so even if in the worst case scenario where this just draws you like 3 removal spells or something, that's great because it drew you 3 cards. If it draws you like a bunch of armor smiths and puts them into play, that's fine because now you don't have to draw the armor smiths, so now you're drawing more impactful cards. And even if it gets you some minions with battle cries and you lose out on the battle cries like Shield Maiden or Doctor Boom, that's still great because for 10 mana you're putting like a 7/7, another 7/7, a 5/5 into play, and then drawing another card. Like this card is just incredible. So that's the deck. Definitely check out the Mulligan guide on TempoStorm.com, but now let's go ahead and jump into some matches, so check those out as well.